when I'm creating a webinar, the attitude is this: what's the biggest limiting belief? What's the thing that gets in the person's way of getting this result? What's a big thing that I could remove so they could never reach for it again? So when they would go to reach for that excuse, it couldn't be there anymore. My goal is always to make people laugh at their problems, because if you laugh at your problem, then it no longer controls you anymore. Yeah, so for sure, I would do webinars. Webinars are designed for the 80-20 of the market. And what do I mean by that? I mean the 20% of the people in the market that are going to get 80% of the results. What I mean by that is the 20% of the people in the market who are going to spend 80% of the money. And I don't mean spend it, I mean invest it. There's some people that if you give them $1 million, they're like, oh, I got to go to the bank and cash it. Like they're already making excuses and complaining, right? I want to serve the people that are willing to invest in themselves, both in time and in money, emotionally and spiritually, as well as financially. And the webinars are one of the most efficient, one of the most effective ways to do that. There's only a few more effective ways. One is the phone, one-to-one, and one is in person. But in person and on the phone are not as quick to scale as being online. So yes, absolutely would do webinars. The three things that I would focus on is the first and foremost, by far, is to have a superior offer that is unmatched in the marketplace. Essentially, if you had a $10 bill and you could sell it for $1, you would win every single time you had that interaction. If people believe that, yes, this $10 bill is not counterfeit, and you're offering it for $1, how many people would say yes to that, and how many people could benefit from that? And the answer is everybody. And so what we try to do first is find the most compelling offer we could absolutely make to the audience, where it would cost more money not to buy it than it would to buy it. That's why the first product's always created to save time. That's the thing that you can do there. Now, there's two ways you can do an offer, by the way. And the first way is the way most people gravitate towards, which is you just get better and you just work really hard and you just put in the hours and you figure out ways to improve over time. And then after a while, you will just become an expert. The only problem with that is it's very hard, it's very slow, it's very tedious. That's the one way to do it. The most common, the other common way is find an audience so in need of help, so desperate for it, that the least amount of help for them is a massive amount of relief. And that's a strategic way of solving the problem. That's a better way to do that. I'll give you an example, and then I'll give you the way to figure this out. The example is this: there's two ways you can make more money in poker. Way number one is you could learn the probabilities, you could study how people bluff, et cetera, et cetera. It's really hard, takes a long time, you'll lose a lot of money along the way. Way number two is find a table you can sit at where everybody sucks at poker, but they like to bet lots of money. And then you wouldn't have to get better and you would get a better result. And that's the way that we want to go after our problems. We want to strategically solve them. So the best way you can start is make an offer so laser focused and so specifically pointed at a very select group of individuals that you're the number one de facto expert in that market, because you're the only one in that market. That's the best type of offer that you could ever make. So I don't do it anymore because I don't have to, because I have the expertise and I have the status and I have the proof and I have the unconscious competence and I put in the reps and I have 10 years experience on most people, because most people haven't been in the business for 10 years. You'll get that automatically as a byproduct. You'll trade up and you'll scale up over time. But at first say, who are the people that with the least amount of effort, where I could barely even try, I could have a massive exponential improvement into the quality of their life? You start with the offer. By the way, you have that and it becomes almost inconsequential what format you use, via webinar, via phone, via squeeze page, via ebook, whatever, right? So that's the first thing we're looking for, is the offer. Then the second thing that I want to be able to do on that webinar is create what we call a paradigm shift. And this is hard to teach, I think, only because it seems foreign. It's easy to actually do, but to wrap your head around the concept, it's challenging for a lot of people. But I'll give you an example, a micro example of a paradigm shift. I was speaking in front of an audience once, about 50, 60 people. Average person in that room had to pay $15,000 to be in this room. So no slouches. But they brought me up there to speak, and I was just riffing. No script, no slides. I had a whiteboard and that was it. And I was working with the audience and I saw this young man, and he stood up and he asked this question to me. He says, Jason, I'm struggling with trying to be successful. It's been an issue for me. And I said to him, define success to me economically. And he says back to me, he says, $10,000 a month. Only if I could make $10,000 a month, then I would be a success. And I looked him right in the eyes in front of this whole audience and I said, you are not ready for success yet. So success is $50,000 a month. I said, what I want you to figure out is, how do you fail your way to $10,000 a month? And if you were there in this room with me, you could see it in his eyes. He was a different person. He could not go back to the old way of thinking. I created a paradigm shift for him immediately. And now we can break down the psychology of it very quickly. Is you want to help somebody, telling them to do something that they're already resistant to is about the hardest way to do it. This guy is resistant to the concept of success. He said so. In his mind, he's created this picture of being a failure and he can't break free from it. And he's been fighting it. So if you fight it just like he's been fighting it, you'll probably get the same results that he's getting, which is he's stuck. He's not making movement. He's not making progress. So I accepted his reality. I said, okay, cool. You want to take the attitude of failure? We'll take it. We'll just make it useful. And that's where the aha was. And everybody else in the audience was like, what is he supposed to do? I don't know what he's supposed to do. And I said, we don't even need to talk about it, do we? He goes, no. I said, keep it to yourself and then report back to me once you've done it. And he goes, got it. Now, that's a micro example of a paradigm shift. But on a macro, when I'm creating a webinar, the attitude is this: what's the biggest limiting belief? What's the thing that gets in the person's way of getting this result? What's a big thing that I could remove so they could never reach for it again? So when they would go to reach for that excuse, it couldn't be there anymore. My goal is always to make people laugh at their problems, because if you laugh at your problem, then it no longer controls you anymore. Right now, people are so overwhelmed by their problem that it feels like it's got them by the throat. But if we can get some space for them to laugh at their problem, to look at their problem in a different light as maybe not a problem, then there's something that we can do with it. And so I'm trying to always create this paradigm shift of what's the constraint and how do we flip the constraint on its head? How do we make it an advantage, or how do we render it inert so it doesn't matter whether they have it or not? And if I can get people to buy in to this concept that there is no limitation that they think is a limitation, then we can make progress. And so that's the second thing that I'm trying to do there, is create an engineered paradigm shift, this aha moment. This changes everything when it comes to blank. The homework for you is, what's the setup? What's the communication where when a person hears it, they say, this changes everything. And now they feel capable where they used to feel incapable. Now they feel like there's progress that can be made where previously there wasn't progress. So offer number one, compelling offer, irresistible. 2, paradigm shift. And then 3, making sure that I communicating to the persons that are showing up to my webinar in a way that they can understand it. I had a client the other day, he paid me for some consulting. So we were doing a consulting call. Here's a good one. He used high ticket. And I said to him, I said, be cautious with language like that. Because first of all, your audience probably doesn't know what that means. And secondly, I said to him, I said, these are people that are resistant themselves to spending large amounts of money on solutions. And now you're telling them they're going to go out and sell high ticket products. And we almost always remove jargon as much as we possibly can. He had another thing in one of his slides. It was so funny. He said, the tech skills are so easy, even a 65-year-old could do it. And I asked him, I go, how old are you? He says, I'm 31 years old. I said, here's what I know about your market. I know a lot about a lot of markets, and you would be very wise to learn more than most people do, to go deeper than most people do with your own audience. I said to him, the best buyers in your market are typically 55 years old, and they're looking to get out of it before they turn 65. And so this could be very derogatory, or could be interpreted to them very differently than what I know your intention is. And just helping him change the wording, even the I's to the U's. Because the other part of his presentation is I went and I counted, and I was like, you have 27 slides that are essentially your story. I. And then I pulled up one of my webinars and I said, I have 4 slides. And it's almost laughable how little I tell on myself and explain myself and position myself. Because ultimately, what will sell people more than anything is your ability to, through communication, transform that individual. There's no more greater establishment of authority than when somebody says, wow, listening to you on this topic, I've gotten more out of it in 15 minutes than I had listening to the last 15 speakers for the last 15 hours. You have better insight into who I am and what I need than all the rest of them combined. And so those are the 3 things. You get that. Those are the high level stuff. Technique is simple. Then it's just a matter of I can give you the check boxes. I mean, they're in my book. Like, you do this, you do that, you do this, you do that, you do this, you do that. But these are the raw ingredients that I want first before I cook the meal. The more I do this, the more I realize is it's all about the objection. I did a training last September and I charged $5,000 a person. And for 2 days, 16 hours, we just went after one topic, and it was called Murder the Objection. A little preposterous of a title, but sometimes you got to make the point. And the more I work with webinars, the more I try to very upfront. Essentially, the flow goes like this. By the end of the webinar today, you're going to discover how to do XYZ. So like some big, wonderful, beautiful thing that they're desperate for. So that's how we start the webinars, kind of with that hook, with that angle, with that promise. I do it a lot differently than that, but this is the easiest way for you to start. You can get fancier with it later. You can dress it up, whatever. But the best way up front is to say, by the end of the webinar, I'm going to show you how to do X, Y, and Z. And then you say, and it doesn't matter that excuse number 1, or even excuse number 2, or excuse number 3. And it's also true that if you, excuse number 4, excuse number 5, excuse number 6, excuse number 7, despite all of those, yes, in fact, indeed, you will be able to, by the end of this webinar, know exactly how to do blah, blah, blah. And so we are literally, right? Literally up front saying this is the issues that we're going to go after.